Picture the most famous dinner in America. You've seen it even if you don't remember seeing it. A white tablecloth, a window full of daylight, a grandmother in a spotless apron lowering a roast turkey the size of a footstool toward the centre of the table, while a grandfather in a dark suit stands behind her, and a whole family leans in from both sides, laughing at something just out of frame. Norman Rockwell painted it in 1942, and the Saturday Evening Post printed it in March of 1943, and it has a name most people never learn: Freedom from Want. Rockwell photographed his actual neighbours in Arlington, Vermont, one by one, and assembled them around a table that was never that full at any single moment. He painted the turkey from life. His family ate it afterward. He later said the painting was done during wartime rationing, when a bird like that was something close to a mirage, and that he worried he had painted not gratitude but abundance showing off. Hold that image, the table, the apron, everyone in their chair. Now let me tell you two things about it that almost nobody knows. The first, that dinner, the whole family, one table, 1 hour, one roast, father at the head, everyone present and accounted for, was not, at the moment Rockwell painted it, an ancient tradition. It was barely older than the grandmother holding the turkey. As a fixed daily ritual for ordinary families, the sit-down family dinner was invented. And I mean invented on purpose by identifiable people writing identifiable books, less than a century before that magazine hit the newsstands. The second, within 11 years of that magazine cover, an aluminum tray with 3 stamped compartments would arrive in American grocery freezers for 98 cents, and the long, slow unbundling of the family dinner would have a product, a price, and a name. Everyone agrees that families stopped eating dinner together. Ask when, and you get a shrug or a culprit. Television, the microwave, the minivan, the phone. Ask people how they know, and they tell you about their own childhood, which is not evidence. It's homesickness. So tonight we're going to do this properly. We're going to run the tape backward and forward until we find the actual moment, the documented, datable moment, when the family dinner acquired its first real competitor and began to lose. And to find when it ended, we're going to have to do something stranger first. We're going to have to find out when it began. Because the biggest surprise in this whole story is that the thing we mourn as eternal is younger than the houses some of you are falling asleep in right now. We're going back there tonight, not as historians squinting at charts. We're going to sit at the tables themselves, a farmhouse board in 1743, a gaslit dining room in 1861, a Milltown kitchen in 1907, a depression parlour in 1933, a living room in 1954 with something new glowing in the corner, a suburban kitchen in 1978 where a strange box hums and pings, one table at a time, everything those people would have seen, smelled, heard and swallowed. So I make these history stories, and honestly I've given up trying to figure out whether anyone actually sleeps to them, or whether you're all just weirdos who find it soothing to hear about compartmentalised Salisbury steak and the exact year an aluminum tray defeated a piece of furniture that had held families together for 4,000 years. Either way, subscribe if you want, get comfortable, here we go. One honest thing before the first candle is lit, because this channel runs on a rule. The dates in this story are real, the books are real, the inventions and the prices and the surveys are real, and when we reach the parts where legend has grown over the record, and in this story legend has grown thick, I will tell you plainly which is which, but the eyes I'm going to lend you at each table belong to no one in particular. The hired girl, the Victorian child, the furnace man's wife, the boy with the TV tray. They are composites, stitched together from account books, household manuals, advertisements, memoirs and photographs, so that you can sit where they sat. The rooms are real. The people are borrowed. That's the deal, every time. Now, take a breath. Let 280 years fall away. The smell arrives before you know where you are. Wood smoke first, not the polite smoke of a fireplace behind glass, but smoke as a permanent tenant soaked into the plaster, the beams, your hair, your one-wool bodice. So constant you will only notice it on the day you finally leave this house and find that the outdoors smells of nothing at all. Under the smoke, bacon fat, old and reheated so many times it had the history. Under the fat, sour milk from the dairy across the yard, and under everything, hay, sweet, dusty, enormous. Because it is August of 1743, it is harvest, and the whole valley smells like a barn with the roof off. You are standing, not sitting. Remember that. It matters more than anything else I will tell you tonight. You are a hired girl on a farm in the Vale of White Horse, in Berkshire, England, 60-some miles west of London, and it is a little past noon, and you're carrying a wooden trencher of boiled bacon and beans to a table that seats 11 people, none of whom will wait for each other, several of whom are not related to anyone else in the room, and all of whom will be finished eating in the under 20 minutes. This is dinner, not supper, dinner. In 1743, dinner is the midday meal, the big one, the one the entire day bends around, because the work is outside and the light is free and no farmer on earth burns candles so that people can chew. Supper, when it comes at 8 or 9, will be bread and cheese and whatever's left, eaten wherever you happen to be standing when you get hungry, and nobody will call the household together for it, because calling the household together twice in one day would be like ringing the church bells for a Tuesday. And when I say the household, I need you to understand what that word means in 1743, because it does not mean what you think it means. It does not mean a father, a mother, and their children. Around that table right now, the master of the farm, a wide sunburnt man of 50, his wife, your mistress, who's been on her feet since 4:30, their 2 grown sons, one daughter, 16, and then the rest, a carter, 2 harvest men hired for the month who sleep in the loft over the stable, a shepherd's boy of 11 who belongs to a family 3 parishes away and was bound out to service the way children are, the way you were at 10 years old. And you, 11 eaters. 4 of them share blood. This is normal. This is what almost every substantial household in England and in the American colonies looks like. A small economy with a roof on it, where family and workforce are the same word. The idea that a table should contain only relatives would strike everyone in this room as not just strange, but wasteful, like heating a room nobody works in. Look at the table itself, because the table is the first of tonight's secrets, and it will follow us all the way to the end. It is not really a table. It is a board, a long slab of oak, 9 feet by 2.5, resting on trestles, scrubbed pale as bone by 2 centuries of sand and elbow grease. When dinner is over, it can be lifted off and stood against the wall, because this room is not a dining room. There is no dining room. There will be no dining room in a house like this for another 100 years. This room is the hall, the kitchen, the workshop, the office, and on rainy days the place where wool gets sorted. The board comes out when food does and vanishes when food is gone, and that is why, nearly 3 centuries later, in your world, People who have never touched a trestle in their lives still say room and board, still say chairman of the board, still talk about a groaning board. The language remembering long after the furniture forgot that eating together was once a temporary arrangement of planks. Girl, the mistress, not unkindly with her chin. Men first, men first. You know the order the way you know the stairs in the dark. The master is served first, and the best of the bacon, the thick middle cut, goes to him and the harvest men, because the harvest men are being paid partly in food, and everyone at this table can price a dinner to the halfpenny. The strong get the meat because the farm runs on their shoulders. The boy gets beans and the fat end. You will eat last, and you will eat some of it standing by the hearth between errands, and no one will think this cruel, including you, because a table is not a circle of love in 1743. A table is a ladder laid flat. Watch how they eat. There is no conversation, or none you would call conversation. The master says the harvest will want 3 dry days. The carter says the off-wheel on the big wain is working loose. Somebody grunts. That is the news, and the news is over. Nobody asks the shepherd's boy how he is feeling. Nobody asks anybody how their day was, because everybody was present for everybody's day. The day happened in the same 400 yards for all of them, and it is only half over, and talking slows the spoon. The sound of this dinner is the sound of horn spoons on wood, of bench legs grating on flagstones, of 11 working bodies refueling. You've heard livestock feed with roughly this soundtrack. That is not an insult to these people. It is what a meal is for, in a world where every calorie at this table was pulled out of the ground within sight of the window, by the people now putting it back into themselves. There was grace, I should say. Before the first spoon moved, the master lowered his chin and said it. 8 words, maybe 10, worn smooth as a stair tread, and everyone's hand stopped while he said it. Hold on to that detail, not because it's pious, but because it is the one moment of this entire dinner when every person in the room did the same thing at the same time. One breath of synchrony, and then the spoons. Remember it, because that little synchronized pause is going to grow. A century from now, it will have swollen into an entire performance an hour long, with a script and costumes and moral supervision. 2 centuries from now, its dying echo will be a woman standing in a living room's blue glow saying, "Shh, it's starting." The pause survives. Only what it worships changes. And the shifts. You asked about the shifts, or you would have. On an ordinary day, 11 around one board is already an approximation, but in harvest, even the approximation collapses. Tomorrow the reapers will be too far up the hill to come in, and dinner will go to them. You will carry it, bread and cheese and bacon and a wooden bottle of small beer, a yoke across your shoulders, a mile each way, and the men will eat sitting against a hedgerow with their legs straight out like dropped tools, and dinner will happen in 4 places at 4 times that day, and no one will record the fact because there is no fact to record. Eating happens where the work is. In the town it's the same, only louder. Journeymen dine in cook shops. Apprentices bolt bread at the counter. A printer's boy eats standing in the doorway watching the street. In great houses it is the reverse extreme. 30 servants feeding in a stone-flagged servants' hall in 2 sittings, while the family dines an hour later, upstairs, apart. High or low, town or country, the pattern holds. People eat by rank, by shift, by workload, by daylight. What almost nobody does, what would require an explanation if you proposed it, is this. Everyone in the household and only the family at one table, at one fixed hour, every single day, as a ritual with meaning over and above the food. That thing does not exist yet. Not here. Not for people like you. It is starting to exist somewhere, though, and since we are being honest tonight, let's look at it. 10 miles east there is a park wall, and behind the park wall a house with 40 windows. And inside that house there is a new kind of room. The gentry are building them all over England in these decades. A room set aside for dining and nothing else, with a table that never gets taken down, mahogany now, because mahogany has started arriving from Jamaica and Honduras, and it can be polished until it holds a candle flame like dark water. A room where dinner is served at the fashionable hour, which is drifting later, decade by decade. Noon in your grandmother's time, 2 o'clock now, 4 or 5 by the 1780s, until dinner will finally slide all the way into the evening and leave a hole in the middle of the day that a new invented meal called luncheon will have to plug. A room where dinner is a performance with an audience of guests, where the placement of a salt cellar is a sentence in a language everyone rich can read. You have seen that room once through a window from a gravel path on an errand. You remember the shine of the table more than anything. A table kept naked and polished like a horse kept for show. Here is what you cannot know, standing in 1743 with a trencher in your hands, and what we, up here in the dark of the future, can see plainly. That room is a seed. The dining room will spend the next 100 years travelling downward, from the great house to the merchant's villa to the clerk's terrace, shrinking as it goes, until it lodges in the floor plan of the ordinary family and changes what a family thinks it is. Nothing carries an idea like a room. Build the room, and the ritual comes looking for it. But not yet. Not for you. Your dinner is 20 minutes on a bench you share with a shepherd's boy who smells of tar and lanolin, and it is already ending. The master stands. The bench scrapes. That is the signal. The way his lowered chin was the signal to begin. The harvest men are out the door while still swallowing. The mistress is stacking trenchers before the last one is empty. You gather. You scour with sand and a twist of straw. You set the board against the wall, and the room stops being a place where anyone eats and goes back to being a place where everything else happens. The mistress catches you, just for a moment, by the elbow. She is not a soft woman. Softness on this farm is a thing that happens to butter, but she looks at you with those quick, pale eyes that have priced every dinner for 30 years, and she says the thing you will remember longer than you remember her face. Eat when there's eaten, girl. The table doesn't love you. The table is where the work sits down. And then, because a cart has come into the yard and the dog is barking and the afternoon is already pulling at her, go on. The table is where the work sits down. Write that on the inside of your eyelids, because the whole first half of tonight's mystery is folded up inside it. We go looking for the moment families stopped eating together, and the first thing the record hands us is this. For most people in most of history, the shared meal was not a sanctuary from the world of work. It was the world of work pausing to chew. It included strangers and excluded sentiment. It happened at noon, or wherever the scythe was, or in 2 sittings by rank. It was warm sometimes. It was orderly mostly. It was absolutely not the candlelit circle of kin that your century is homesick for. Historians who study meals, and there are historians who study nothing else, bless them, reading 400 years of household accounts and cookbooks and diaries the way detectives read alibis, keep arriving at the same finding, awkward as it is. The traditional family dinner is not ancient. Before the 19th century, the evidence for ordinary families ritually dining together all present every evening, is thin to the point of transparency, not because families didn't love each other, because dinner had not yet been given that job. So the question changes shape, right here in your hands, the way the best questions do, not, when did we abandon the ancient family dinner? But, who built it? And when? And why? This fragile, radiant, exhausting ritual that would live scarcely 100 years before the trays came, because somebody built it. Rituals that precise do not grow wild. Somebody decided that the evening meal should be sacred, decided it in print, with rules, and sold the idea to an entire civilization so successfully that within 2 generations everyone had forgotten it was ever new. To meet them, we have to leave the farm. Close your eyes against the hay dust. Let the smoke and the bacon fat fade. Let 118 years pass. The board against the wall crumbling to firewood, the trestles lost, the shepherd's boy and the harvest men and the mistress with her priced dinners, all going down into the churchyard grass one by one, whoever they were, the way history closes over people who were never written down. Let iron come, and steam, and gaslight. Let the cities swell like ticks. And when you open your eyes, it is a Tuesday evening in October of 1861. It is 6 o'clock, and you are 8 years old, standing outside a shut mahogany door in a narrow tall house in Camberwell, South London, waiting for a gong. The smell through the door is roast mutton, and it is agony. You're hungry the particular way an 8-year-old is hungry, which is totally morally at the top of your lungs, except that your lungs are not permitted. You're wearing a collar that was starched this morning into something closer to carpentry than laundry, and it has been sawing at the underside of your jaw since 5 o'clock, when Sarah scrubbed your face and neck with a flannel and cold water and buttoned you into dinner clothes. Dinner clothes. To eat in your own house, with your own parents, you dress as if for church. Nobody in this house thinks that is strange. That is the first thing to understand about the world behind this door. None of it is casual. Every particle of what is about to happen was designed. And the second thing to understand is that it was designed recently, some of it literally this year. And your mother owns the blueprint. It is downstairs at this moment on the shelf in the morning room, a fat book in red-brown boards, over 1,100 pages, published in London in this very year, 1861, price 7 shillings and 6pence. The Book of Household Management by Mrs. Isabella Beeton. Your mother consults it the way the vicar consults scripture, which is fitting, because that is roughly the position it holds. It will sell around 60,000 copies in its first year, and nearly 2 million within 7, which for a book about gravy and servants is a number publishers see in dreams, and its author, here is a detail the book's authority does not advertise, is 25 years old. Mrs. Beeton, the oracle of the English dinner table, the voice your mother obeys on matters of carving and courses and the moral weight of punctuality, is a young journalist's wife assembling and borrowing recipes at a ferocious rate for her husband's publishing business. She will be dead at 28, of fever after childbirth, and the book will simply go on without her, growing, edition after edition, an empire with a ghost at the top. Nobody at your table knows any of that. What they know is what the book tells them, that dinner is the great trial and triumph of a household, that a mistress is a commander and the table her review, and that, the book says this outright in words your mother can quote, dining is the privilege of civilization, and a people's rank in that civilization can be measured by their way of taking their meals. Read that sentence again, up here in the future, and you can hear it. The sound of a meal being given a job. The gong goes. A real gong. Brass on a stand in the hall, struck by Sarah with a leather-headed mallet, a sound like a polite thunderclap rolling up the stairwell. Your father bought it because the houses on either side have one. 60 years ago, only a mansion would have announced dinner with anything grander than a shout. Now every terraced villa with one servant and pretensions has a gong, and the gong means the performance begins. Doors open on 3 floors, the household converges, the dining room. Breathe it in as you cross the threshold, because this room is the seed from behind the park wall, 4 generations on, shrunk to fit between party walls. 14 feet by 12, and every inch of it insists. Wallpaper the colour of burgundy wine. A fire banked in the grate even though October has barely turned cold, because a cold dining room is, per the book downstairs, a domestic failure. Gaslight hissing gently in 2 brass brackets, throwing a light your sentry will never see again. Warm, faintly trembling, kind to silver and cruel to dust. A mahogany table, extended tonight to its full length by a leaf that Sarah and the cook wrestled in at 4 o'clock. White damask cloth, ironed to a shine, and at every place a small forest of implements, 3 forks, 2 knives, a spoon laid crosswise, because eating has become a literacy, and every course is a spelling test. Your father takes the head. Watch him do it. He does not simply sit. He assumes the chair the way a magistrate assumes a bench. He has been gone since 10 minutes to 8 this morning. Gone to the city, to an office you have never seen, doing work you could not describe, in that great smoking London on the other side of the river, which is, as far as you're concerned, another planet. And this is the hinge of everything, so hold it steady. Your father leaves. The farmer in 1743 never left. His work was the yard, the field, the same 400 yards his dinner was in. Your father's work is elsewhere. The 19th century has done something no century did before it at scale. It has split the world into 2 hemispheres, work and home, and hung them on opposite sides of a train timetable. Home is now a sanctuary defined by everything it is not. Not the office, not the exchange, not the street. And this hour, this table, is the one ceremony where the 2 hemispheres touch, where the man from the money world is received back nightly into the world of the hearth, like a diver hauled up and unscrewed from his helmet. That is why the ritual is so heavy. It is carrying the whole weight of reunion every single night. Grace first. Your father says it, longer than the farmer's, polished, with a pause in the middle for effect, and you watch the mutton steam during the pause and understand at 8 years old something about the relationship between holiness and gravy. Then the carving. In 1861, carving is not a chore, it is an accomplishment, a manly art with the literature. The book downstairs devotes pages to it with diagrams, where the knife enters a saddle of mutton, how to lift the slices thin and whole, how a man who hacks disgraces his table. Your father carves well, and knows it. The knife is his, the carving knife, bone-handled, sharpened by the cook this afternoon, and it lives in a baize-lined box between performances like an instrument. Every plate is built at the head of the table and passed down, and the passing is the point. All food at this table flows visibly from the father's hands. On the farm, meat went to the strongest because the farm ran on their shoulders. Here, meat flows from the head because the household runs on his salary. The table is still a ladder. They have only stood it upright and put a tablecloth on it. Now the rules. You're permitted at this table. Many children of your class are not. In wealthier houses down the road, children eat in the nursery with a governess and join their parents for dessert like small ambassadors. But permission has a price, and the price is silence. Children should be seen and not heard. Your mother says it evenly, without malice, the way one states the boiling point of water. Here is a thing she does not know, and would not thank you for telling her. That proverb is at least 400 years old, and in its original form, written down by a friar around 1450. It was not about children at all. It said a maid should be seen, but not heard. Girls. It was a rule for silencing girls, and the 19th century widened it to fit everyone small. Your legs do not reach the floor, your collar soars. Between the soup and the mutton lies a geological age. You sit and are seen and are not heard, and you learn what the table is designed to teach, because this table is designed to teach. That is its deepest function. Mind your knife, elbows off the cloth. Wait. Chew silently. Defer. Answer when addressed. Briefly, brightly, and never first. The Victorians say it plainly in their manuals with no embarrassment. The table is the child's first school of morals, the place where small savages are civilized nightly in 15-minute lessons. Dinner is a classroom with gravy. You will hear the echo of this idea for the rest of tonight's story. Every time your own century frets that children who miss family dinner turn out wilder, sadder, hungrier in the soul, it is repeating an article of faith written in rooms like this one by people your great-grandmother's age between diagrams on carving. The conversation, such as it is, belongs to the adults, and even for them it runs on rails. Your father relates a fact from the newspaper. Your mother offers the day's domestic intelligence at the level of policy, never of labour. One does not discuss the details of cooking at table. The book is firm on that. The food must appear to have happened immaculately, the way the starched collar happened. Nothing painful, nothing financial, nothing bodily. The talk is not for exchanging information. It is a fire kept lit to prove the house is warm, and 2 floors down, in the basement kitchen, the temperature of that proof is being paid for. Sarah and the cook have been on their feet since 6 in the morning. The range down there is a black iron beast that must be black-leaded, fed, raked, and coaxed. The mutton has been turned and basted for 2 hours in a heat that makes the whitewashed walls sweat. And when the family has finished each course, Sarah climbs the stairs, clears, descends, climbs again. She will make that journey some 40 times today. She eats afterward in the kitchen, standing or perched from the joint's remainder with the cook, in 10 unceremonious minutes that would look entirely familiar to a hired girl from 1743. Hold both pictures at once, because this is the honest shape of the golden age at its most golden. Upstairs, the sacred family circle, complete and glowing. Downstairs, 2 women who are not family, eating in a shift so that the circle upstairs can believe itself effortless. The family dinner did not replace the old world of ranked and shifted eating. It was built on top of it, the way the villa is built on top of the kitchen. It is not only England, and it is not only mutton. Across the Atlantic, this same liturgy is being written by American hands, and being written, note this, even earlier. Catherine Beecher, eldest sister of that enormous Beecher clan, sister to the woman who will write Uncle Tom's Cabin, published her Treatise on Domestic Economy in Boston in 1841, 20 years before Mrs. Beeton, and it swept the Young Republic edition after edition, year after year. Same gospel, American accent. The home as a woman's sacred province and rateful profession. the table as the nation's first schoolroom, regular family meals as the loom on which character is woven. Sarah Josepha Hale, editor of Godey's Ladies' book The Most Read Women's Magazine in America, the woman who campaigned 17 years until Lincoln fixed Thanksgiving as a national feast in 1863, preached the family board relentlessly. By the 1850s and 60s, an entire industry of American manual sermons, magazine columns, and architectural pattern books is saying the same thing in the same breath. Build a dining room, gather nightly, father at the head, mother presiding over the moral climate, children silent and absorbing. The pattern books actually drew it. Andrew Jackson, Downing's cottage designs sold by the tens of thousands, with dining room printed on the floor, plan of houses for ordinary families, a room that ordinary families had never had in the history of the species. Build the room, and the ritual comes looking for it. And the ritual came, between roughly 1850 and 1900, in England and America both. The family dinner went from an invention of the comfortable classes to the official self-image of both nations. Not always the practice. The practice, we'll see, was always shakier than the picture. But the picture, the thing everyone agreed a family was supposed to look like at 7 in the evening, that was installed in these decades, and it has never been uninstalled since. When your own century grieves the lost family dinner, this room is what it is grieving. A room that, when your grandmother was born, did not exist for people like you. Dessert comes at last. Baked apples and a rice pudding with a brown skin your mother would not dream of calling the best part, and which is the best part. You're addressed twice. Answer twice, briefly, brightly, never first. And when it ends the old way. Your father pushes back his chair and the room stands with him. Some signals outlive their worlds. On your way out, passing the sideboard, your mother rests her hand a moment on your starched shoulder, and, this happens some nights, not all, she leans down, smelling of lavender water and dinner smoke, and delivers the day's verdict. You sat very nicely tonight. 6 words. You will be ashamed at 40 of how much of your childhood was steered by the hope of those 6 words. That is what a moral classroom means. The lessons go in with the pudding, and they do not come out. But you are 8, and you are finally unbuttoned. And upstairs Sarah is turning down your bed, and the last thing you hear through the floor as you fall asleep is the faint chime of Sarah clearing silver 2 rooms below. The sound of the machine that made the evening holy being quietly disassembled for the night by the person it was heaviest for. Sleep, child. Your table will hold all your life. The gong will go nightly through the 60s, the 70s, the 80s. You will grow up and preside over a table of your own and quote your mother's book to your own silenced children. The golden age is real as gaslight for the people who can afford the gas. But even now, even in 1861 at the Ideal's high noon, there are streets in this same city, a mile north, where the picture has never once come true, and the century that is coming, the one with your grandchildren in it, is about to do something to time itself, cut it into shifts, sell it by the hour, drag it through factory gates at midnight, that the mahogany door cannot keep out. Because here is the next honest turn in tonight's mystery, and it is the one the nostalgia always skips. The family dinner began cracking the moment it was born, not in the parlour, in the mill. So let the gaslight gutter, let the gong's brass go quiet, and 46 years slide past, cross an ocean, and when the smell comes back, and it comes back before the light does, it is cabbage and coal smoke and hot metal. It is 10:30 at night in December of 1907, and you are a woman of 31 standing in a kitchen in Braddock, Pennsylvania, in the roaring orange shadow of a steel mill, packing a dinner that will be eaten by a man you will not see eat it. The pail is on the table in front of you, and the pail is the whole story, so look at it. Tin, cylindrical, about 9 inches tall, with a wire bail handle and a story of dents. It comes apart in layers. Coffee goes in the bottom compartment, a full pint, because down at the mill a man can set the pail near enough to the heat that by midnight the coffee is warmer than it left home. The middle holds the dinner itself. Tonight boiled beef from Sunday, cabbage and bread thickly buttered against the cold. The top tray is for pie when there is pie. There is pie tonight. It is the end of a pay week. You pack it the way your mother packed one and her mother packed one, wedging the bread so nothing shifts when it swings, and you do it half asleep on your feet at 10:30 at night because the night-turn men eat their dinner at midnight in a shed or on a plank bench against a wall that shakes in 10 minutes by the light of the open furnace doors. Dinner, for your husband, is a meal in a bucket eaten a quarter-mile from every person who loves him. And when I say shift work, I need you to understand what the shifts in this valley actually are, because your century's word for hard hours does not cover it. The steel mills of Allegheny County in 1907 run day and night, and they divide the clock exactly in half. A 12-hour day turn and a 12-hour night turn 6 days a week, sometimes 7. Every other Sunday, when the turns rotate, comes the thing the men call the long turn. 24 hours straight, noon to noon, so that the schedule can flip. Investigators are in this very town this very year, as it happens. A team of social researchers running what will be published as the Pittsburgh Survey, one of the first great studies of how industrial America actually lives. And they are writing down, with a kind of controlled fury, what the 12-hour day does to a household. What it does is simple. It makes the family dinner arithmetically impossible. Not discouraged. Impossible. A man on day turn leaves before 6 in the morning and is home, scrubbed grey to the elbows after 7 at night, eating whatever can be held hot for him, while the small children are already being put down. A man on night turn sleeps through the middle of the day behind a curtain while the children are shushed around him, rises at 4 in the afternoon, eats the day's big meal alone or with whoever happens to be in the kitchen, and walks to the gate. 2 weeks on one clock, 2 weeks on the other. The family does not orbit a table. The family orbits a whistle. You hear it now as it happens. The mill whistle, low and enormous, felt in the window glass before you hear it in your ears. The gong in Camberwell called one household to one table. This thing calls 3,000 men to a gate. And it is the true clock of this town. It says, when the turns change, it says when accidents happen, it will say, in a certain pattern nobody has to explain to you, when there has been a death. Every meal you have cooked in 9 years in this house has been timed to it. The whistle is the gong of Braddock, and the difference between them is the difference between the two Americas that are pretending, in 1907, to be one. There is more. Count the eaters in your own house, the way we counted them on the farm. You, your husband, absent, on nights. 4 children, the eldest 12, the youngest not yet 2, and then the boarders. 3 young men from the same county in Hungary that your husband's people come from. Steel workers all, who sleep 2 in the front room and 1 on the kitchen cot, on a rotation that matches their turns, and who pay you by the week for bed, washing, and food. 1 in 3 households in these mill wards keeps boarders. It is how the rent gets paid on $11 a week, which means your table, when it is full, holds family and strangers mixed, eating in shifts by the clock of the mill, and if that sounds familiar, it should. It is the farmhouse again. It is the household as a small economy with a roof on it, ranks and lodgers and staggered sittings, right here in the 20th century. 1 generation after the parlour people declared the private family dinner to be the timeless foundation of civilization for the millions at the bottom of industrial America, and this is the plain documented truth of it. The golden age of the family dinner never arrived at all. It was a picture in other people's windows. It was the lithograph that came free with the flour company's calendar. The one you have, in fact, tacked inside the pantry door. A family of 6 around a white cloth, bathed in lamplight, everyone in their chair. You look at it most days. It is not a memory of anything. It is an advertisement of a life scheduled for somebody else. The children eat at 5 before the boarders come off day turn hungry as furnaces. You feed them at the oilcloth-covered table. Soup, bread, the ends of things. And this is, in its way, the closest this house comes to the picture in the pantry. 4 children, 1 lamp, you standing over them refilling, never sitting, eating your own supper in slices off the edge of the stove the way your mother did, the way the hired girl did, the way women stationed at hearths have eaten since hearths began. The 12-year-old feeds the baby. The middle 2 fight in Hungarian, which they think you follow more slowly than you do. It lasts 11 minutes. It is loud and warm, and no one says grace, and it would horrify Camberwell, and it is dinner, and it is together, and nobody in the room considers it a ritual or a failure or anything at all. It is Tuesday. Then the boarders, at 7, in their steam and their stories. Then the pail, at 10:30. 3 sittings, 1 kitchen, 1 day. And here is the detail to carry forward, the one the whole chapter folds into. At noon today, your 2nd son, who is 9, carried a hot pail to the mill gate. Women and boys stream toward those gates at midday all over this valley, hundreds at a time, swinging dinner pails, a procession. Your century has entirely forgotten it ever staged. And he stood at the fence in the slag-smelling cold until his father came out of the shed door, and they had 4 minutes, the length of time it takes a man to drink the coffee layer while it's hot. The boy watched his father eat leaning against a wall, among other men leaning against walls as far as the fence ran. That is the family dinner of the mill. A boy at a fence, a man against a wall, 4 minutes, and the pail handed back through the pickets like something at a prison, and both of them, the man and the boy, entirely used to it, waving once, going their ways. The reformers, to be fair, are scandalized on your behalf. This is the great age of scandal about exactly this. Settlement house workers and home economics missionaries fan out through wards like yours, teaching immigrant mothers to serve balanced meals at regular hours around a properly set table, as if the problem were ignorance of tablecloths, and not the arithmetic of the 12-hour turn. The new home economists, it becomes a school subject in these very years, domestic science, taught to your daughter with a real gong of earnestness. Preach the American dinner table as the machine that will turn the children of Europe into citizens, and the churches and the magazines keep up the old Camberwell sermon in American. The table is the school of character, the hearth, the anchor of the republic. Nobody is against the family dinner. Everybody from the pulpit to the flower calendar is loudly for it. That is worth pausing on, because it tells you what the ideal had already become by 1907. Not a description of how people ate, but a standard everyone was measured against, and most people quietly failed. The mourning for the family dinner is not a modern invention either. They were mourning it here, in print, in 1907, when your husband was at the wall with his pail, mourning a thing your family had never yet possessed. The whistle again. 11 o'clock. You put the pail by the door with his scarf. In the front room a boarder coughs. Behind the curtain the baby stirs and settles. You bank the stove and stand a moment in the last of its heat with your hands pressed to the small of your back, and if you had breath left over for philosophy you might notice the thing we can see from up here, that this kitchen is not the past of the family dinner, some rough stage on the way to the picture in the pantry. It is the other permanent truth about eating, running alongside the picture the whole time. Meals bent around work, families syncopated by clocks they do not control, women feeding in shifts and eating standing up. The picture and the pail, the parlour and the whistle, running in parallel down the whole length of this story. The only thing that will change in the century you're handing to your children is which force does the bending. In 1907, it is the employer's clock that pulls dinner apart from the outside. What is coming next is stranger. What is coming next pulls from the inside. A voice in the house itself, at the table itself, that asks softly every evening for the family's attention. Your husband comes home at 7 in the morning, by the way, grey to the elbows, and sleeps. The pail comes home empty. The pie was eaten. That is how he says it was a good night. He taps the tin lid twice and you hear it from the stove, and that, in this house, in this year, is the whole conversation, and it is, I promise you, a real one. Let the whistle fade now. Let the orange glow on the ceiling dim. 26 years is what it takes. The boys at the fence grow up and scatter. The 12-hour turn is finally broken in the steel towns in 1923 after a public campaign shames the industry out of it. The boarders marry or move west. The war comes and goes and takes one of the Hungarians with it, whoever he was. History closing over him too. Radio crystal sets appear in attic windows around 1920 like the first few fireflies of an enormous summer. And when the light comes back up, it is a Thursday evening in February of 1933, 7 o'clock sharp, and you are a girl of 10 in a rented duplex in Dayton, Ohio, and your entire family is at the dinner table, every chair filled, everyone present, everyone silent, and every face in the room is turned to the same corner where a varnished wooden cabinet the size of a doghouse is speaking. Yes, everyone at the table and nobody at the table, both at once. You are living inside the hinge of tonight's whole story, and you are 10, and you think it is wonderful. Start with the food, because it is 1933, and the food is doing arithmetic. Creamed chipped beef on toast, stretched with extra white sauce. Stewed tomatoes from jars your mother put up in September. Bread pudding waiting on the sideboard, made from heels of loaves saved all week in a paper sack. Your father has work, 3 days a week at the cash register company, which in the fourth winter of the Depression makes your family, and everyone knows it, lucky. A quarter of the country's workers have nothing at all. The duplex is heated to 60 degrees exactly. Your mother darns by the radio in the evenings, and you know the sound of it the way other generations knew crickets. The little wooden click of the darning egg under the voices. The radio itself. A Philco cathedral-style set, arched like a little church window, bought new in 1930 for $49.50, when your father still had 5 days a week. The last large purchase this family made, and by common consent the best. Understand what has happened in 1 decade, because nothing in the history of the home ever happened faster. In 1922, radio was a hobby for boys with wire impatience. By this winter, something like 3 of every 5 American families own a set, and in the cities more. By the end of the 30s, it will be nearly all of them. The number of radios in America passed the number of bathtubs a while back, and nobody was surprised. In 10 years, a piece of furniture that talks went from a miracle to a member of the household. And I choose those words carefully, member of the household, because that is precisely how it is treated. It has the best corner of the room. It is consulted, obeyed, adjusted, worried over. Your baby brother said his first sentence to it. When it needed a new tube in 1931, the house went quiet for 6 days as if someone were ill. And at 7 o'clock on weeknights, this entire nation does the same thing at the same time. And I need you to understand that literally. At the peak, a few winters back, the 7 o'clock program, 15 minutes, 5 nights a week, was drawing something like 40 million listeners in a country of 125 million people. 1 American in 3. Movie houses learned to stop the picture at 7. Wheel a radio onto the stage and let the audience listen, because otherwise nobody came to the early show. Hotels piped it into dining rooms. If you walk down a residential street on a warm evening with the windows open, people your age will tell this story for 60 years, and it is true. You could follow the entire broadcast without missing a line, pouring out of one house after another, the same voices, the same laughter, the whole street synchronized like one enormous parlor. The gong called a household, the whistle called a town, this thing calls a continent. So look at the table now, tonight, at 7:10. Everyone in their chair, father, mother, you, your brother, and dinner going forward in the old forms. Dishes passed, elbows minded, your mother still running the table with the same rules her Camberwell generation mother ran on her. But every face is turned 45 degrees away from the table centre, toward the corner, and the conversation, which the Victorians built this table to house, has been replaced by listening. When the programme is funny, the family laughs together. Actually together, one organism. Your father's big laugh underneath like a bass note. When it turns tense, forks stop halfway. And when you, forgetting, start to ask a question, 3 heads turn and one voice. Everyone's mother's voice. Everywhere. This exact winter. Says the sentence the whole century will keep saying in one form or another from now on. Shh, it's starting. The grace pause found its new god. I told you to hold on to that detail back at the farm. One breath of synchrony. The master's lowered chin. Everyone's hands stopped at once. Here it is again, grown enormous. The entire household, the entire street, the entire time zone, falling silent on cue at the same instant, attention gathered and pointed. Only the direction has changed. The farmer's grace pointed at heaven. The Camberwell grace pointed at father and mutton. This one points at a lit dial in the corner. And the Sabbath of it comes on a Sunday in March, the 12th of March, 1933, 8 days after the new president's inauguration, banks failing in every state, and at 10 o'clock that night 60 million people sit down by their sets, and a calm voice says, "My friends, I want to talk for a few minutes with the people of the United States about banking," and does exactly that, plainly, kindly, for 13 minutes. The papers will name these broadcasts fireside chats. Families pull chairs into a half circle for them. It would not occur to anyone to speak during one. The most powerful voice in the country now enters the home not through the pulpit or the newspaper, but through the dinner hour furniture, and the home rearranges itself around the door he comes through. Of course, there is a fight about it. There is always a fight, and it is always in the etiquette columns first, which is how you know a civilization has noticed something. The manners writers of the 20s and 30s take up the question in earnest. Should the radio play during dinner, and conduct a small decade-long war over it? One camp holds the Victorian line. The table is for conversation. The art of dining together is precisely the art of attending to one another, and a machine performing in the corner is a guest who never stops talking. The other camp, and you can hear in this argument the first draft of every argument your own century will have about screens at the table, word for word, 100 years early, answers with reasons that sound suspiciously like surrender. It keeps the children quiet. It gives a tired family something shared to attend to. It fills silences that were, if we are honest, not golden to begin with. Some households legislate. No radio until the plates are cleared is a common treaty. News, yes. Comedy, no, is another. In your house, the treaty is that the set goes on at 7 and off at 7:30, and on Sunday stays off through dinner entirely. A rule your mother enforces with the door of the cabinet, closing it over the dial like a lid over an eye. Note what all the treaties concede, that the question is now permanently open. Once dinner had no rival at its own hour, in its own room. Now every family, every evening must decide, actively, again and again, forever, whether the table gets the family's attention. That decision, arriving in the house, is the true event of this chapter, not the radio, the decision. And yet, let the record show, because Rule 8 of this channel is honesty about what the evidence will and will not carry. The radio did not empty the table. Sit in your 10-year-old body and check every chair, full. Radio asks only for ears. It leaves the eyes free for faces and the hands free for forks, and it cannot be carried off to a bedroom. It is furniture. It weighs more than your brother. Where it sits, the family must sit. So the strange truth of the 1930s is that radio, the first great competitor for the dinner hour, probably gathered families as much as it divided them, pinning everyone to the same warm room at the same hour with the same voices, dinner and broadcast interleaved. Some nights it even hands the table back. The programme ends, the dial clicks, and the family spends the rest of dinner discussing what it heard, arguing about the president, repeating the comedian's line until your brother does the voice right, your father explaining what a bank holiday is with the gravy boat as the bank. The competitor arrived, and the table, that old oak veteran, absorbed it, the way it had absorbed grace and gongs and silence and borders. Everyone still in their chair, the forms still holding. But a rehearsal has taken place, and nobody in the room knows it. The family has learned, pleasantly 15 minutes at a time, how to sit together facing the same direction. It has learned that the dinner hour and the broadcast hour are the same hour, that attention is a dish that can be served to the corner of the room, that shh, it's starting is a normal sentence for a mother to say across a laden table. Every muscle the next machine will need has been trained by this one. All that is missing is a machine that asks for the eyes as well. You get your bread pudding at 7:30 when the cabinet door closes over the dial. You are, for the record, the last person in this story's chain who will remember all of it. You were born close enough to touch both worlds. You will live to be very old. You will sit at your grandchildren's table in another century entirely, and when they ask you, for a school project, half listening, phones face down and lit, whether it's true that families used to eat dinner together every night in the old days, you, who are the old days, will open your mouth to say yes and stop. Because you will suddenly see this table again, every chair filled, every face turned to the corner, and you will say, at last, the truest sentence in tonight's whole story, the one I will ask you to keep within reach from here to the end. We were together. Where our minds were, I couldn't tell you. Now the light changes. It doesn't fade this time. It flickers and turns blue. 21 years. The war swallows the world and gives it back rearranged. The boys who ate the radio eat K rations in Normandy in the Pacific and come home in a hurry to be married. The government guarantees their mortgages and the builders pour foundations by the 1,000-acre. And out on Long Island, a firm called Levitt and Sons starts turning potato fields into a town at the rate of a finished house every 16 minutes. $7,990 for 4 rooms and a future. 17,000 houses where the potatoes were, and every one of them, every single one after 1950, sold with a television set built into the living room wall. Read that again, because the architecture is confessing. The radio was furniture you added to a home. The television is now poured in with the foundation, standard equipment like the furnace, like the stove. Build the room and the ritual comes looking for it. They built the room 17,000 times. It is Tuesday, October the 5th, 1954, a little before 6 in the evening, in a development a lot like that one, outside Philadelphia. You are 11 years old. You're lying on a grey wall-to-wall carpet with your chin in your hands, 4 feet from a 21-inch RCA in a mahogany veneer cabinet, and your mother is standing in the kitchen doorway holding something that arrived today in the shopping bags, holding it a little away from her body, the way you hold a thing you have not yet decided to be proud of. It is a slim box, frosted cold, and on the front of it is a painting of a television set. Look closely at that box, because it is the most honest package in the history of packaging. The front is designed to look like a TV screen, a wood grain border, a screen-shaped window, and little painted control knobs down the side, and framed inside the screen, where the picture would be, is the food. Turkey, whipped sweet potatoes, peas. The name is printed right across it. TV brand dinner. Swanson of Omaha, Nebraska, 98 cents. The package is not being subtle, and it was not designed to be subtle. It is saying, this food belongs to that machine. Aim me at the television. Most products lie a little about what they're for. This one drew you a diagram. Here is the story of how it came to exist, and I'm going to tell it to you the way this channel tells stories like this. The legend first at full strength, because the legend is wonderful, and then the seams in it, because you and I have a deal. The legend goes like this. Thanksgiving of 1953 goes wrong for C.A. Swanson and Sons, the Omaha poultry giant. Somebody has overestimated America's appetite, and when the holiday is over, the company is sitting on a mountain of unsold turkey, 260 tons of it, 520,000 pounds, frozen, with nowhere to put it. In the legend, there isn't warehouse space, so the turkey rides the rails, loaded into refrigerated boxcars which, in 1953, only keep their cold when they're moving. So the company sends the turkey back and forth across the country, Nebraska, and back again. 10 cars of homeless Thanksgiving rolling through the winter while their accountants sweat. And into this crisis walks a salesman named Jerry Thomas, who on a visit to a food distributor sees the neat compartmented aluminum trays that Pan American Airways has been experimenting with for warming meals on long flights, and who, on the spot, in the legend, sketching on the back of an envelope, has the idea entire. Put the turkey in a tray like that, 3 compartments, cornbread dressing and gravy in one, sweet potatoes in another, peas in the third, freeze it, box it up with a picture of a television on the front, and sell America not a leftover problem but a modern miracle. Dinner, complete, hot in 25 minutes, no cooking, no dishes, no attention required. Aim me at the television. The company orders a first cautious run of 5,000. Within the first full year, they have sold 10 million. Within a couple of years, 25 million a year, and the number never comes back down. That's the legend, and every beat of it may be familiar to you the way folk tales are familiar, because it has been told in 1,000 articles. The turkey train, the envelope, the salesman with the idea. Now the seams, because they matter, and because this channel promised. The heart of it is true and documented. Swanson of Omaha really did launch the TV brand dinner nationally in 1954. The first one really was turkey with cornbread dressing, sweet potatoes and peas in a 3-compartment aluminum tray. It really did sell for about 98 cents. And it really did sell in the millions, immediately beyond anyone's projection. Those numbers come from the company's own crowing. But the turkey train has never been found in the records. No one has produced the freight documents for those wandering refrigerator cars. The tale rests on late recollections told decades on, and Jerry Thomas's envelope is contested territory. He told the story vividly for the rest of his long life, was feted for it, put his handprints in cement for it, and members of the Swanson family and former company men pushed back hard, insisting the frozen dinner was developed by the brothers Gilbert and Clark Swanson and their food lab teams as companies develop things, meeting by meeting, and that no lone salesman conjured it on an envelope. Ideas with 1,000 fathers usually had a committee for a mother, and one more seam, the oldest. Swanson wasn't even first. A company called Maxon Food Systems had been making frozen dinners on compartmented trays, they called them stratoplates, for airplane passengers in the Navy back in 1945, 9 years earlier, and others tried retail versions in the late 40s, and America shrugged. The invention existed. It sat there, ignored for nearly a decade. What Swanson actually invented, and this is the real event, the one that earns this chapter its place at the hinge of tonight's mystery, was the aim. They looked at the machine that was entering American living rooms faster than any machine had ever entered anywhere, and they named their product after it, dressed the box as it, and sold the dinner not as food, but as a ticket to sit in front of it. The tray didn't create the desire. The tray was a confession that the desire already existed, printed, priced, and stocked in the freezer aisle. Because here is what the television had done while nobody was counting. In 1950, about 9% of American households had a set. By 1955, 5 years, 1 presidential term, it is roughly 2/3, and climbing toward 9 in 10 by decade's end. Nothing in the history of the home ever spread faster. Radio at its wildest took twice as long to get that far. And unlike the radio, the television will not come to the table. The radio asked for ears and left the rest of you at dinner. The television demands the eyes, and the eyes drag the body, and the body takes its plate with it. The set lives in the living room, bolted into the floor plan 17,000 times. The table lives in the kitchen or the dinette, and every evening at 6 o'clock those two rooms begin a tug of war for the family. And into that tug of war, in the autumn of 1954, comes a 98-cent aluminum ally that takes the living room's side. So, Tuesday, October the 5th, 1954. Your mother is in the doorway with the box held slightly away from her body, and the reason is your father, who is not home. Inventory week at the store. He'll be in at 8. The old rule, the Camberwell rule, the rule her own mother kept without ever once stating it. Hold dinner till the man is home, everyone in their chair. That rule says wait, and she's tired, in the way of 1954, which her magazines will not print, tired of producing alone every single evening, unpaid and unassisted, the domestic pageant that Victorian households mounted with servants. Mrs. Beeton commanded a staff, remember. The 1950s housewife inherited the full performance, the meat, the 2 vegetables, the set table, the gathered family, the moral weather, and inherited no Sarah to climb the stairs 40 times. The women's magazines this very month are thick with advertisements promising her liberation by appliance, and here is one in her actual hands, cold through her oven mitt. On the box, under the painted screen, no work before, no dishes after. We're trying something, she says, in the voice of a woman narrating her own alibi. Oven to 425. Foil trays in. The box says 25 minutes. And at 6:30, in a development outside Philadelphia, a small historic surrender is served. 3 aluminum trays on 3 folding TV trays. Because those exist now too, tubular steel legs, fiberboard tops with a lithographed rooster, sold in nesting sets of 4 at the hardware store all through the 50s. Furniture invented solely so that dinner could migrate, set up in a row before the 21-inch RCA, for you, your little sister, and your mother, who keeps, out of some rearguard instinct she couldn't name if you asked, her apron on. You will remember this dinner for the rest of your life, and here is the strange part. What you will remember is that it was wonderful. The tray steams through its little foil roof when your mother peels it back. 3 neat rooms of food, glistening, absolutely modern. Nothing touches anything else. For a certain kind of 11-year-old, this is the perfection of all cuisine. The turkey tastes like the airplane food you've never had. The sweet potatoes are molten at the centre, and you burn your tongue and don't care. The peas are an army of identical green soldiers, and you eat them with the spoon, which is allowed. Because, and this is the point, this is the whole point, nobody is watching you eat. Every eye in the family is on the screen, where the picture is snowy until your mother, without being asked, gets up and adjusts the rabbit ears the way she once would have straightened a tablecloth. Dinner has stopped being a room where you are seen and not heard. The Camberwell child that was the deal for a century. The table watched you, corrected you, civilized you. 6 words of verdict with a hand on your starched shoulder. Tonight, gloriously, terribly, no one watches. The table has stopped being a classroom. The screen would rather you didn't fidget, but it will never check your elbows. When your father comes in at 8, he stands in the living room doorway in his coat and takes in the scene. The folded trays drying by the sink, the 3 of you blue lit, the smell of roast turkey in a house where no one roasted anything, and your mother looks up with her chin set slightly, ready to defend it, and your father, this is the part the etiquette war never predicted, says, "Any of those left?" There is one in the freezer. Fried chicken. He eats it in the armchair at 20 to 9 with his tie loosened, plate of foil on his knees, watching the fights from Madison Square Garden, and pronounces it, around a drumstick, not half bad. Not everyone surrenders so cheerfully. The record keeps the protests too. Jerry Thomas liked to tell interviewers about the hate mail. Actual letters addressed to the company from men complaining that Swanson was ruining the American home, that their wives had stopped cooking real dinners, that the tray was the end of something. He claimed he was even told off in person. Take the anecdote with the same salt as the turkey train. It comes from the same storyteller. But the letters he described rhyme perfectly with what the pulpits and columnists of the mid-50s were saying in public and in print, which is documented beyond argument, that the TV dinner was an attack on the family table, that the living room supper was raising a generation of silent children, that something sacred was being sold for 98 cents. 1954 is the first year in this entire story when the morning for the family dinner names a defendant, a date, and a price. They mourned it in 1907, but vaguely at fate. Now the elegy has a product number, and the elegy changed nothing, and you should sit with why. The trays sold in the tens of millions a year to the very households that read the columns and nodded, because the TV dinner was never the disease, it was the fever showing. The desire came first. The desire of the tired woman in the doorway, of the 11-year-old who hated being watched, of the man who'd rather eat to the fights than preside. The wish, 60 million strong, to be excused from the nightly pageant, and the tray merely made the wish cheap, warm and washable. Technology in this story never breaks down doors. It waits outside doors people are already leaning against and opens them. Before we leave 1954, climb the hill with me. There is one. There's always one. The developers left it because it was too steep to pour foundations on. A bald knob of old pasture at the edge of the development, and on a clear November evening you and the paper route bicycle stop at the top of it, out of breath. Just as the light goes, look down. 400 houses in their curving rows, everyone built from one of 3 floor plans, everyone with its picture window facing the street like a proscenium. And as the dusk comes down, watch what the houses do. One by one, in no order, the picture windows begin to flicker blue. Not lamplight. Lamplight is yellow and steady. This is that cold, jumping aquarium blue, the colour of a cathode ray finding phosphor, and it spreads down the streets as the sets warm up, house after house after house, until from up here the whole development pulses faintly, all together like one organism, because it is in a sense one organism. Most of those living rooms are tuned to the same 3 channels, laughing within a half second of each other, the street synchronized exactly the way the radio street was synchronized on a warm evening in 1933, except that no sound spills out. Television keeps its voice indoors. From the hill, the great national dinner hour of 1954 is perfectly silent. 400 families, the same blue light on all their faces, and here and there, if you could see through the walls, and from up here tonight you can, the small aluminum glint of a tray. A boy on a hill watching the world eat. Hold the picture a moment because you will not get another like it. This is the last era in this whole story when you could stand in one place and see the family dinner, see where everyone was at 6:30, know what they heard and what they watched, because they all heard and watched the same thing. Every era after this one disperses. The channels multiply, the rooms multiply, the hours multiply, and the family dinner stops being visible from any hill anywhere. What you're looking at without knowing it is the twilight of the synchronized world. Still one clock, one glow, one dinner hour. For the last few years it will ever have them. Come down off the hill, wipe the chain grease off your hands, grow up. And now time itself accelerates because that is what it did. The years from 1955 to 1980 do to the family dinner what no single villain ever managed. Nothing dramatic, nothing dateable, just a long, patient loosening, one small slack at a time. And since we are a channel that keeps its promises, every strand of the loosening you're about to feel is real and counted. The commutes stretch. The fathers who moved out to the developments discover that the jobs mostly stayed downtown, and the average journey to work lengthens year by year as the metropolises sprawl, and a man who boards a 7:04 train and reboards a 5:41 is not a man who presides at 6 o'clock. Dinner slides to 6:30, to 7, or splits. Children fed early. Husband's plate kept warm in a 200-degree oven under foil, which, if you are keeping score, is the Milltown pattern of 1907, returned in a Cape Cod with a 2-car garage. The second car arrives. At mid-century, most families had 1 car or none, and by 1970 nearly a third of American households run 2 or more, and the second car is driven decisively by the mother. And the second car is a fact about dinner, because a family with 1 car pools its evening by necessity, and a family with 2 has bought the mechanical possibility of being in 2 places at supper time. The children's evenings professionalise. Little League incorporates thousands of leagues across the decade. Dance lessons, scouts, band practice, hockey at rink rental hours, the whole apparatus your century will call activities culture, every single one of them scheduled by adults who are not your mother, at hours that treat the family dinner as empty space. And the teenagers, this one is quiet but enormous. The teenagers leave the table by the employee entrance, the drive-ins and the golden arches multiplying along every strip. McDonald's alone goes from 1 stand to thousands of restaurants in these years, staff themselves almost entirely with high school kids on evening shifts. By the late 70s, the American 16-year-old with an after-school job is not the exception but close to the rule, and a girl who clocks in at 4 and off at 9 does not eat dinner with her family. She eats a free employee meal standing up in a stainless kitchen in 10 minutes. The hired girl of 1743 ate exactly that way. We have simply rebuilt her position and staffed it with our own children and called it pocket money. No one of these things kills the family dinner. That is the point, and it is why the mystery of tonight has no single culprit to arrest. Each one only asks dinner to move a little. Half an hour later, 1 child short, 2 nights a week, just this season while hockey runs. The table, that old oak veteran, absorbs and absorbs, but there is a difference between this era's pressures and the mill whistles, and the difference is the heart of everything. The whistle was an enemy. The family in Braddock was bent apart by a force it hated and resisted, and it kept, in the pantry, a picture of the thing it wanted instead. The forces of 1965 are not enemies. They are the family's own choices, each one individually good. The better job farther away, the second car, the batting order, the daughter's own paycheck. The family dinner is no longer being besieged. It is being traded away, freely, one small good reason at a time, by people who all still believe in it. Ask anyone in these years. The pollsters are starting to, and will open their ledgers in a moment. and they will tell you the family dinner is sacred. And they mean it. They mean it in the car, at the rink, on the 541. The ideal is never renounced. It is simply outbid nightly in small change. One more machine, and then we can stop accumulating and start counting. It enters on tiptoe, and it starts, of all places, with a melted candy bar. In 1945, a self-taught Raytheon engineer named Percy Spencer, no schooling past 12 years old and one of the great radar men of the war, is standing near an active magnetron, the tube at the heart of a radar set, when he notices the chocolate bar in his pocket has gone soft. Other men had noticed. Spencer was the one who went and got popcorn kernels, held them near the tube, and watched them jump and blossom. Radar, it turned out, could cook. Raytheon patented it within the year, and in 1947 offered the world the first commercial microwave oven, the Radar Range, 5.5 feet tall, 750 pounds, water-cooled, costing about as much as a house, and bought by exactly the customers you'd guess: restaurants, railroads, ocean liners. For 20 years it stayed a commercial curiosity, and then in 1967, Amana, an Iowa appliance maker Raytheon had acquired, did the thing that matters to our story. They shrank it to a countertop box and sold it to families, $495, the domestic Radar Range. Adoption was slow, then unstoppable, a rarity in 1970, in one American kitchen in 4 by the mid-80s, in 9 out of 10 by the late 90s. The same curve the radio drew, the same curve the television drew, the home absorbing another talking fast machine, except this one talked in a single syllable. Ping. Add it to the lineage, because your ears have been collecting these all night. The master's lowered chin, the Camberwell gong, the Braddock whistle, the radio's 7 o'clock theme, the TV jingle. Every one of those sounds, whatever else it did, was plural. It summoned everyone at once, the household, the town, the time zone, to the same act at the same moment. The microwave's ping is the first summons in the history of this story addressed to one person. It does not say dinner is served, it says yours is ready. And with that, the last technical barrier to the fully unbundled family dinner quietly falls, because the microwave's real product was never speed. It was the abolition of the shared mealtime as a necessity. For all of human history, the economics of the hearth did the gathering. Cooking was so laborious that it happened once, in quantity, at a fixed hour, and if you missed it, you ate it cold or not at all. The fire made the family punctual for 10,000 years. The microwave ends that. Now the household's food can wait frozen, portioned for one. The freezer cases followed the market. TV dinner begetting pot pie begetting 100 single-serving descendants, and any member of the family, of any age tall enough to reach the keypad, can summon a private hot dinner in 4 minutes at any hour. No skill, no coordination, no negotiation with anyone else's schedule. Eaten together, which was a necessity that became a virtue, is now a virtue only. And virtues, unlike necessities, must be chosen fresh every single night, by tired people, against all the good small reasons. Which brings us to a Wednesday evening in October of 1978, in a split level in the western suburbs of Chicago, where you're 14 years old, standing in the light of an open refrigerator at 6:52 p.m., listening to the sound of your family eating dinner, all of them, in 4 rooms. Stand still and take the census by ear, the way you do without knowing you do it. From the den, 1 floor down, canned laughter and the clink of a fork on stoneware. Your father, home since 6:40, eating chicken and rice off a folding tray in front of the network news he waited all day for, tie over the chair back, shoes off, one white sock crossed over the other. He left the house at 6:55 this morning. The plant moved out to the far ring road 2 years ago, which was supposed to shorten his drive and did for a while, until everyone else's plant moved too. 11 hours, door to door, nobody begrudges him the armchair. From upstairs, through a shut door with a felt marker sign on it, the thin, overdriven hiss of headphones, and at intervals, a fork set down on a plate balanced on a desk. Your 17-year-old brother, who took his dinner up at 6:15 with the phone's long cord stretched under the door like a supply line, and who is, at this moment, either doing trigonometry or talking to a girl, and the plate will come down tomorrow or Friday fossilized. From the kitchen table 4 feet from you, your 9-year-old sister, still in shin guards, eating a microwaved pot pie and reading a library book propped against the napkin holder, one sock of mud drying on the linoleum under her chair. Practice ended at 6. Your mother dropped her and swung straight back out, and your mother herself is the 4th room, and the 4th room is the Buick. She showed a house at 5. She got a real estate license 3 years ago, when the mortgage adjusted, and evenings and weekends is when houses get shown. And the note on the refrigerator in her fast slanted hand says what the notes always say. Yours in fridge, 3 minutes on high, love yours in the fridge, 3 minutes on high. There it is, the entire chapter, magnetized to the door at eye level. Not dinner is at 6. Yours. The family's food no longer happens to the family. It is dispensed in labelled units across a 4-hour window. Your mother still cooked this, mind. Browned the chicken at 4 o'clock in the same electric skillet her mother swore by, portioned it onto 5 plates, filmed each one in plastic wrap. She has simply become the commissary for a household of soloists, which is to say she has Sarah's job now, as well as the mistress's, cook and server and clearer for a dining room that no longer physically assembles. The table where your sister sits reading is the same 6-seat maple your parents bought in 1962, and look at it. 2 placemats out of 6, the rest of its surface silted over with the sediment of a busy family. Mail, a hairbrush, your brother's college brochures, a shin guard's twin, the good scissors, a permission slip going soft at the corners. Furniture tells you the truth faster than testimony. The table has become a shelf, and in the drawer beneath it, since we're taking inventory of survivals, the carving knife, bone-handled, your grandmother's, from the Camberwell world by way of 2 estates. It comes out exactly twice a year now, Thanksgiving and Christmas, when this family, like nearly every family in this development, still stages the full Victorian pageant flawlessly from muscle memory. Everyone in their chair, father carving at the head, grace said by the youngest, elbows checked, the whole liturgy performed with genuine warmth twice per annum, like a language that survives only in its hymns. Nobody planned that arrangement. But 200 years of dinner shrank into the holidays, and the holidays, notice, are the part everyone still calls sacred and non-negotiable, which tells you the family knows exactly what the ritual is worth. It has just stopped being able to afford it retail. The microwave, a radar range in fact, the county's idea of a status appliance, Harvest Gold, purchased with 2 years of your mother's commissions, receives your plate, 3 minutes on high. You are 14, and you're not sad, and the record requires me to report that honestly. This kitchen at 6:52 is to you freedom. Nobody watching you eat, the evening yours, your dinner hot on your own signal, the whole house in a low contented hum of separate satisfactions. If tonight has a villain, no one who lives here can see it, because it does not feel like loss. It feels like everyone finally getting what they wanted. The Victorian dinner was heavy, precisely because it carried the whole weight of reunion. Unbundled, the weight is gone, and the family floats, pleasantly, separately, in adjoining orbits. Ping. You take your plate, and this is the reflex that will interest historians more than anything else in the house. You do not even consider the 2 empty placemats 4 feet away. You carry it down to the den, to the second best chair, next to your father, who moves his tie off the armrest to make room, which is how he says what he has no words for. You watch the news together. During the commercial, he asks about the algebra test. You say it was okay, he says okay, and that, 4 minutes, 1 question, is the family dinner of October 1978. A boy against a wall of cushions, a man in his chair, the length of a coffee break, and both of you, the man and the boy, entirely used to it. At 9:20 your mother comes in with her coat still on, eats her own plate, 3 minutes on high, standing at the counter with the day's mail, the way the mistress ate by the hearth in 1743, the way the mill wife ate off the stove's edge in 1907, the way women stationed at the centre of households have eaten across this entire story, while the theory of the family dinner was written around them by people who are sitting down. Your sister comes for cereal she doesn't need and stays 11 minutes narrating soccer, and your mother, dead on her feet, coat still on, hears every word of it, and that easy accidental kitchen, a counter, a bowl, a tired woman, a mud-socked girl, holds more actual communion at 9:20 than the maple table saw all week. Write that down next to the pantry lithograph in Braddock. In the file, this channel keeps marked honest complications. Presence was never the same thing as furniture. It only lived in the furniture for a while. And the counterweight, before we count, because if I let you believe every 1978 household ran like this one, I'd be building a myth as false as the one we started with. Across the street, the Kowalczyks eat together at 6 sharp, 7 nights a week, grace and all, because their parish and their grandmother and their own stubbornness hold the line, and their kids sulk through it and will remember it at 40 as the spine of their childhood. 2 doors down, a widowed nurse and her son eat together at 4:30 before her night shift. Off trays, laughing at reruns, no table involved, tight as a drum. The unbundling was never uniform and never total. It moved through the population the way weather moves, faster where the schedules were loosest and the counter pressures weakest, slower where church or culture or plain habit pushed back. Millions of tables held and hold. What changed by 1978 is not that families stopped. It's that the machine of daily life stopped assuming they would. Work schedules, school sports, television programming, food packaging, the very floor plans. The new open-plan houses going up west of here have no dining room at all, just an eating area dissolving into a family room built around a television wall. Every system that touches 6 p.m. and now treats the gathered family dinner as one lifestyle option, among several, to be assembled by hand, nightly, by anyone who still wants it, against the grain of everything. Your grandmother's world enforced the dinner and made deviance expensive. Yours permits it, prices it, and lets it compete. The dinner did not die. It was deregulated, which is exactly the kind of sentence that demands numbers and the numbers are where our mystery takes its last strange turn. Because starting right around now, the late 70s, and in a torrent by the 80s and 90s, America decides to count. Pollsters, sociologists, paediatricians, advertising men. Everyone begins asking families the same plaintive question: how many nights a week do you eat dinner together? And the answers get printed under headlines shaped like sighs, and an entire genre is born. The death of the family dinner story, which your century reads roughly annually to this day. So come count with me. It is the last stop before we solve this thing. But bring the skepticism you've earned tonight, all 240 years of it, because the counting turns out to be haunted by everything we've seen. The invented golden age, the pantry lithograph, the morning that is always older than the mourner. And the first thing the numbers will show us, if we hold them to the light, is the fingerprints of the myth pressed all over the data. So here you are one more time, and this time you are grown, 38 years old, a Tuesday night in March of 1999, in a kitchen in Columbus, Ohio. And you are, savour the irony, history certainly did, eating dinner with your family when the telephone rings. Your daughter is 9 and narrating school. Your husband is upending the parmesan over spaghetti from a jar. The television is off, mostly because it broke. And the voice on the phone is professionally warm and says it is conducting a brief national survey on family life, and asks the question: in a typical week, how many nights does your whole family eat dinner together? And you stand there with the receiver warm against your ear, your actual family actually eating actual dinner behind you, and you discover that you have no idea. Because what counts? Count with her, honestly, this typical week. Monday, all 4 of you, at the table, 11 minutes. 2 of those minutes spent negotiating about broccoli for surely yes. Tonight, yes, obviously, minus the phone call. Wednesday, your husband has the late shift and it's you and the kids. Is 3 of 4 a family dinner? Thursday, all 4 of you ate pizza out of the box in front of a rented movie, everyone hip to hip on one couch, laughing at the same moments, the most togetherness of the week by any human measure. But on the couch, to a screen. So does it count? And who decides? Friday, the 12-year-old ate at a friend's. Sunday, you cooked the full roast pageant at your mother-in-law's 3 generations, carving knife and all. The honest answer is somewhere between 2 and 6, depending on definitions nobody has given you. So you do what respondents do in every poll in every decade. You consult not your calendar, but your conscience. Feel the old lithograph glowing in the national pantry, sense without being told what the right answer is supposed to be, and you say 4, maybe 5. The voice thanks you. Dinner is coldish. And your answer goes into the great pool with 100,000 others exactly as soft, and comes out the other end as a percentage with 1 decimal place, printed under a headline shaped like a sigh. That is the machine that manufactures what your century knows about the death of the family dinner, and now that you've stood inside it, let's read its output like adults. The numbers do exist, and they do move. The most careful, long-running comparison anyone assembled in these years. The political scientist Robert Putnam made it famous in his book Bowling Alone in 2000, drew on decades of marketing surveys that had asked the same agree or disagree statement since the mid-70s. Our whole family usually eats dinner together. In 1977, about half of married Americans agreed. By the late 90s, about a third. That is a real drop, measured with a consistent yardstick, and it will not be argued away. Something genuine loosened in those 20 years, and you've spent tonight watching every strand of it happen. But mark what the yardstick cannot do. It starts in 1977. Nearly every statistic in every elegy you've ever read starts, at the earliest, in the 60s or 70s. Because nobody counted before that. Because when a thing is assumed, no one measures it. Which means the entire statistical literature of decline measures the slide from the 1960s table, that one particular historically peculiar plateau, the post-war, one-earner, high water mark of the Victorian invention, and calls the top of that plateau always. The surveys cannot see the farmhouse shifts, the mill pails, the borders, the servants eating standing. Their 0 point is Rockwell. The data is honest. The baseline is a painting. And the counting grew a second, stranger flower. The family dinner became medicine. Beginning in the mid-90s, a research centre at Columbia University devoted to studying substance abuse started surveying American teenagers annually and found, year after year, a correlation that made headlines every autumn for a decade and a half. Teenagers who ate dinner with their families 5 or more nights a week were dramatically less likely to smoke, drink, or use drugs than teenagers who managed 2 or fewer. And other studies chimed in. They got better grades, ate more vegetables, reported less despair. The centre's chairman repeated one line so often it became a kind of national proverb. Parental engagement is the best protection a teenager has, and dinner is where engagement lives. None of those correlations were fabricated. The numbers are the numbers. But you have been trained over 4 centuries tonight to check what a claim is resting on. So check. Correlation. Families that manage 5 dinners a week differ from families that manage none in 100 ways besides dinner. Schedules, incomes, neighbourhoods, tempers, the plain prior fact of wanting to be in a room together. When researchers later reran the question with those differences held level, 2 sociologists, Anne Meyer and Kelly Musick, did it most famously with data tracking the same teenagers across years. Most of the dinner effect thinned toward the ordinary, suggesting the table was less a vaccine than a symptom. Close families eat together because they are close, and the closeness, not the chewing, does the protecting. Which does not make dinner worthless. A reliable nightly chance at closeness is not nothing. It may be the whole game. But notice, because it is the last echo tonight, and by now you can hear echoes before they arrive. The table as the guardian of the young, the meal as moral medicine. Skip it, and the children run wild. You've heard this sermon before. It was preached over your starched collar in Camberwell in 1861, between diagrams on carving. The 19th century said the family table built character. The 20th said it prevented risk behaviours. It is the same claim wearing a lab coat, and it is not so much false as it is old. Older than the evidence, older than the surveys, exactly as old as the invention it defends. And when researchers finally stopped asking and started watching, a UCLA team in the early 2000s wired up a few dozen ordinary dual-earner households with cameras and followed them through their actual weeks. The most intimate direct look anyone has ever taken at how modern families really eat. They found pretty much what you found standing in the refrigerator light in 1978. Fathers home late, children fed early, food prepared in shifts and eaten in orbits, everyone present at once at the same table a minority of the time, and in nearly every house, parents who said, with evident feeling, that the family dinner mattered enormously to them, and who felt guilty. There it is, the whole national condition in one frame, the practice scattered, the ideal untouched, and in the gap between them, that hum of low-grade guilt which may be the family dinner's most durable product. Because here is the finding under all the findings, the one thing every poll in every decade agrees on without exception. Americans never stopped believing. Overwhelming majorities in every survey from the 50s to the smartphone age say the family dinner is important, say they want more of it, say they feel its absence. The belief holds absolutely steady across the entire era of the decline. We are not a civilization that abandoned the family dinner. We are a civilization that keeps failing to afford it, nightly, in the currency of hours, and keeps the lithograph tacked up in the pantry all the same. One last movement of the data, and the counting chapter can rest. The trays and screens kept evolving after 1978, and the migration you've been tracking all night, table to tray to counter, completed its final leg. The phone in your Columbus kitchen was bolted to the wall. Within a decade of that survey call, the phone was in every pocket, and the screen, which in 1954 was one glowing hearth, the family at least huddled around together, had carved like a glacier into private screens, one per person, portable to any room, glowing at any hour. The counter lost to the bedroom door closed. By the 2010s, the surveys found half of teenagers eating at least some meals alone in their rooms, and the etiquette wars of 1933 and 1954 reconvened one more time, word for word. Phones face down at the table, no devices at dinner, the same treaties your great-grandmother struck over the Philco now enforced against machines that answer back. And in those same years, a quiet counter-signal, pandemic lockdowns of all things, briefly stapled whole families back to their tables for months, and the polls registered a strange, wistful spike. Dinners together up, and large majorities saying they wanted to keep it. Whether they kept it, the data is still deciding. The wanting, as ever, was never in doubt. So close the ledger, and let's finally say what we came to say. You have sat at every table now. Farmboard and mahogany, oilcloth and maple, TV tray and refrigerator light. The evidence is in, all of it, and the verdict comes in 3 parts, and the mystery, when did families stop eating dinner together, and when did it begin, is at last ready to be solved. Part 1. The thing we lost was not ancient. Say it plainly because the whole culture has it backward. The daily family dinner, all the kin, only the kin, one table, one evening hour, sacred over and above the food, was designed, written down, and sold, mostly between the 1840s and the 1880s, by the Beechers and the Beatons, and the magazine editors and the pattern book architects to a middle class newly split between workplace and home, and desperate for a nightly ceremony of reunion. Before them, shifts, boards, pails, ranks, noon dinners, strangers at every table, warmth in plenty, but no nightly sacrament. The ritual we mourn as the oldest thing in the world is 4 or 5 generations deep. We mourn it as ancient because that is precisely what its inventors taught us to feel. They sold it as timeless the day it came out of the box, the way good traditions are always sold. And they built better than they knew. It is a genuinely magnificent invention, the equal of anything the 19th century produced in iron, but it was held together from birth by a hidden strut, necessity. The fire made it possible. The labour of cooking made eating a scheduled collective event. There was one warm room, one pot, 1 hour, and nowhere else for attention to go after dark. The Victorians thought they had founded their table on virtue. It was founded on the economics of the hearth, with virtue painted over the joinery. Part 2. It was cracking before it finished drying. It never once covered the whole population, not the servants who carried it up the stairs, not the mill families bent around the whistle, not the boarders or the hired girls or the women eating standing at the stove in every era, including yours. The mourning for it is not a symptom of its death. The mourning is a birthmark. They were mourning the family dinner in 1907, in 1933, in 1954. In every decade the ideal has existed, because an ideal that outruns most people's circumstances generates grief as a byproduct, continuously, the way an engine generates heat. Whenever you hear that the family dinner died a generation ago, and you will hear it all your life, and the generation is always the last one, you are hearing the oldest song the ideal knows how to sing. And part 3, the answer, the actual answer, to when it began. The unbundling began the moment dinner acquired two things it had never faced together in 10,000 years. A competitor for the family's attention inside the home, and a technology that removed the necessity of eating at the same time. Not one, both. The radio in the 20s and 30s brought the competitor, the first voice ever to enter the dining hour and ask the family to look away from itself. But radio left the necessity standing. One heavy set, one warm room, food still made by hand at fixed hours, so the family stayed pinned together around both hearths at once. The competitor without the unbundling merely bent the table. It could not break it. And so the honest date, if you demand one date, and you have earned the right to demand one, is the winter of 1953 into 1954. That is the season the two forces finally met. The television, sweeping toward 2/3 of the nation's living rooms and asking for the eyes, and the aluminum tray, 98 cents, that dissolved the necessity. Dinner with no cooking, no schedule, no table, aimed by its own package at the machine. The moment the TV dinner shipped, eating together stopped being how food worked and became a choice. Everything after was just the choice getting easier to decline. The radar range in 1967 making the unbundling frictionless. The second car and the activities and the shift split decades wearing the choice thin. The pocket screens finishing the migration. The table lost to the tray lost to the counter lost to the bedroom. Each move so small nobody ever felt themselves decide. Ask when families stopped eating dinner together, and the truthful answer is never quite, and also gradually always everywhere in an 11-minute erosion that is still going on tonight. But ask when it began, when the long together of the hearth became optional, and you can, at last, name the season and the price. It began when dinner got a rival for the family's attention, and a technology to act on it. It began at 98 cents, and the thing it began unmaking was not the eternal order of the human family. It was a beautiful Victorian machine for making sure that people who loved each other ended up in the same room once a day, which it turns out is not a small thing to lose, even if it was invented. Especially because it was invented. Because whatever was built once on purpose by tired ordinary people can be built again any evening by anyone with no equipment but food and a decision. Which is, in fact, happening right now, tonight while you drift. Come see the last table. It has no date worth naming. Call it this year, call it any Tuesday. And no address worth naming either. And by now you know the rule well enough to say it with me. The room is real. The people are borrowed. And they could be almost anyone. Which is the point. It is 6:40 in the evening. It is raining a little. And somewhere on an ordinary street in an ordinary kitchen that has no dining room because the builders stopped bothering decades ago, a family is against the entire drift of this story, about to eat dinner together. Not because anything requires it, which is exactly why it counts. The smell first, always the smell first. Onions gone soft and sweet in butter, and under them something plainer. Potatoes, boiling, knocking their small shoulders against the pot the way potatoes have knocked in every kitchen in this story. In Berkshire and Camberwell and Braddock and Dayton, the one sound 4 centuries could sit down to together. A woman is stirring with the radio on low. Some voice, some song, it doesn't matter. She switches it off herself when the plates go down. An unremarkable click that is the great-great-grandchild of a cabinet door closing over a lit dial, and of a gong, and of a lowered chin. And she has no idea, and she doesn't need one. A man calls up the stairs that it's ready. No gong, no whistle, just a name called twice, the oldest summons there is. A phone goes face down on the counter, still lit, buzzing once against the laminate like something settling for the night. A chair scrapes. Another. A glass of milk is poured to the exact height a 9-year-old considers fair, under supervision, by treaty. Everyone in their chair, and nothing happens. That is what I have brought you here to watch, at the end of everything, an evening on which nothing happens. 11 minutes, maybe 14. The potatoes are past. Past the potatoes, 4 words that have crossed every threshold in this story without changing, and butter goes down through them the way butter does, taking its time. The 9-year-old narrates school inaccurately at length, and is heard. The older one, who is 15 and lives mostly behind a shut door with a felt-tip sign on it, 1 floor above and 1 century after a boy with a stretched phone cord, surfaces long enough to be sardonic and eat most of a loaf of bread, and is also heard, which is harder, and happens anyway. The man tells a story about a co-worker that has no ending, and the woman laughs in the middle, where the laugh actually lives. Somebody's socked foot finds a chair rung, the rain keeps on. The window over the sink goes from pewter to dark without anyone noticing the moment it turns, the way it always goes, the way it went over the hayfields and the gaslit airway, and the slag heaps and the blue-lit development. The same window, more or less. The same dark arriving on schedule, and inside it, holding steady against the night like a small lit raft. A table with a family on it. Stay in this kitchen a while. There is no hurry now. The story is over. This is just the part where it breathes. Watch the small things, the way you've learned to watch them tonight. The 15-year-old, reaching past his sister for the salt, briefly and absently rests his other hand on the back of her chair, 1/8 of a second of architecture gone before anyone sees it except that you saw it. The woman eats, sitting down all the way through the meal, from the first bite to the last, and if nothing in that sentence sounds remarkable to you, then you were dozing in Berkshire and Braddock, and I will only say, 400 years of women at hearths would like a word, and the word is good. The man gets up once, only once, to fetch the pepper mill, and standing there at the counter he glances at the face-down phone, its little light pulsing softly under it like a heartbeat under a blanket, and he leaves it there and comes back, and nobody knows a battle was fought, which is how most battles for the table are won now. Silently, one turned back at a time, the plates empty the way plates do from the middle outward, down to smears and shine. The 9-year-old constructs something out of her last 3 Ps that is either a face or a boat, and is told, mildly, in words her mother's mother used, and her mother's mother's mother, all the way back up the line past gongs and trenchers, not to play with her food, and she plays with it slightly less, which is the traditional settlement, ratified nightly for 2 centuries. Second helpings are offered and refused, and then half taken anyway. The bread is finished. The rain thins. Under the table, the dog of the household. There's been a dog under nearly every table in this story. I simply never mention them. Under the farm board, under the mahogany, under the maple. Patient, permanent, the one dinner guest whose attendance never once declined in 400 years, collects the evening's diplomatic payments from the 9-year-old's hand and sighs down onto his side like a dropped coat. And the talk goes where table talk goes, which is nowhere, beautifully. It is not a classroom tonight. Nobody's being civilized, examined, or improved. It is not a performance. There is no audience, no verdict, no 6 words to earn. It is not even conversation. Half the time, it is adjacency, the low warm channel of a family idling in the same air, and long stretches of it are silence, and the silence is not a failure. The Victorians who built this room inside us believed the table must always be talking. The surveys which grieve for it count the nights and never the quality. But sit here, low in your chair, heavy-lidded, listening the way you listen when sleep is already reaching for you, and you can hear what the meal actually runs on, underneath the words, forks, rain, the refrigerator clearing its throat, a chair creaking as someone tips it, and the old warning about tipping it, issued without heat, obeyed without conviction. The clink and scrape and murmur of people who do not need to entertain each other. Presence has a sound, and it is not talking. It is this exact unrecordable hum, the same hum under the horn spoons in 1743, under the gaslight in 1861, under the canned laughter in 1978. Every table in this story had it, whatever else it lacked. It is the one inheritance that never missed a generation. 11 minutes, maybe 14. Then the scrape of the first chair pushing back. Not the master's now. It's the 9-year-old's. She's remembered something urgent and fictional. And the meal ends the way meals end now, raggedly, without a signal, dissolving rather than concluding. The 15-year-old stacks plates unasked, carries them the 8 feet to the sink and is gone upstairs 2 at a time. The door with the felt tip sign clicks. The light under it burns on. Let it. He was here. He'll be back tomorrow, or he won't. And the night after that he will. The table keeps no attendance sheet, whatever the researchers wish. The man washes. The woman dries. They talk in the shorthand of people who have washed and dried 1,000 nights, sentences with no beginnings, because the beginnings are 20 years old. The counter is wiped down in 3 long strokes. The dog is let out and stands a moment in the wet yard, nose up, reading the neighbourhood's news, and is let in again, smelling of rain. The face-down phone is picked up at last, glanced at, found to contain nothing that mattered, and pocketed with the keys. And the table, look at it once more before the light goes off. Cleared, wiped, dark wood, drinking the last of the kitchen light. Tomorrow morning it will be a homework desk, and at noon a mail depot, and by 4 a staging area for a science project involving apparently papier-mâché. It is a shelf and an office and an ironing board, and once a year, under the bone-handled knife that waits in its drawer, an altar. It is never only a table. It never was. Not the board on its trestles, not the mahogany under its damask, not this one. It is where the work sits down, the mistress said. And she was right, and it is where the family lands. And that is also right, and it has been both things at once down the whole length of this story. holding whatever was set on it. The picture in the pantry was never a lie exactly. It was a wish, and a wish, kept long enough, tacked up through enough winters, mourned through enough centuries, is just a table waiting to be set. The kitchen light clicks off. The house settles into its nighttime sounds. A furnace somewhere below, water in a pipe, the rain giving up entirely. Upstairs a tap runs and stops. A door closes gently. Another. The small lit raft has gone dark and everyone aboard it is drifting now, the way you are drifting, toward the same warm nowhere. So let go of the dates. You carried them well all night, but you don't need them where you're going. Let 1743 go back to its hayfields, and 1861 to its gaslight, and 1907 to its whistle, 1933 to its dial, 1954 to its blue windows, 1978 to its refrigerator light, 1999 to its telephone ringing through the spaghetti. Let the hired girl set down her trencher, wherever she is. History closed over her long ago, and over the shepherd's boy, and the harvest men, and Sarah on her 40 stairs, and the boy at the mill fence with the pail, and the Hungarians, and whoever they all really were. The rooms were real, the eyes were borrowed, and the borrowing is over now. Hand them back with thanks. They were only ever you anyway, in older clothes, at older tables, hungry at the end of the day like everyone who ever lived. And notice, before sleep takes the noticing from you, where all of it was pointing. Every table in this story was trying to do one thing. The board on trestles did it with bacon and rank. The mahogany did it with mutton and rules. The pail did it through a fence in 4 minutes with pie. The trays did it side by side in the blue light. The counter at 9:20 did it with cereal and a coat still on. Gather. That's all. Every era built the machinery it could afford out of whatever it had. Oak, brass, tin, aluminum, foil, folding legs, a note on a refrigerator, to solve the one problem that never changes. The people you love scatter into the world every morning, and something has to bring them back into one room before the day ends, or the house is just a hotel with familiar strangers in it. The machinery keeps changing. The problem stays. The wanting stays. 50 polls in 50 years, and the wanting never moved an inch. You're warm enough now, fed enough, together enough. Even alone in a dark room you are together enough, because every voice in this story is stacked up inside you, generations deep, around a table longer than any house could hold. That's more than most of history got. That's enough. It's enough. It's enough. Tomorrow there will be schedules again. Tomorrow there will be the 5:41 and the practice run and the late shift and the note on the refrigerator. Yours, 3 minutes on high. Love. Tomorrow. The phone will win some of the battles and the counter will win others, and somewhere a kitchen will pull off the whole quiet miracle again. 11 minutes, everyone in their chair, and no one will know it was a miracle, which is how the best ones work. But that's tomorrow. Right now there is only this: a dark house, a cleared table, rain finished, everyone home. Let it come. Let sleep take you the way the end of dinner takes a family. No signal, no ceremony, one chair at a time, dissolving rather than concluding. Let the day be cleared and wiped in 3 long strokes. Let the voices around your table, tonight's and all of them, every century's worth, drop to that low warm hum that presence makes, forks and rain and the refrigerator's sigh, the sound that never once skipped a generation. Let your thoughts push back from the table. Let them stack their plates. Let them climb the stairs slowly and slower, and stop. Centuries will pass. The kitchens you saw tonight will change beyond recognition, and so will the one you fell asleep near. The table will be a counter, and the counter will be something without a name yet, and the screens will be woven into the air itself, probably, arguing for the eyes of children not yet imaginable. The old wooden board is already ash and antique. The gong is in a museum. The pail is a collector's shelf piece. The aluminum tray is in a landfill, patient as Pharaoh's gold. But people will still come hungry to the end of the day, still call each other's names at evening twice up some future stairs, still pass what needs passing hand to hand around whatever the table has become, still linger 1 extra minute in the warm adjacency of the people who are theirs, because the machinery was never the point, and the gathering was never in the furniture. Some things don't change. The hunger doesn't change. The gathering doesn't change. The dishes are done. The house is quiet. The last light on the landing goes out, and the dark comes into the hallway the way it came over the hayfields, unhurried, familiar, sure of its welcome. Somewhere down the years, a woman with a lamp is looking in on the sleepers one last time, the way someone once looked in on you, pausing in a doorway, counting the slow breathing, satisfied, moving on. She has been making that round for 400 years, in aprons and shawls and bathrobes, by rushlight and gaslight and the green glow of a stove clock, and she makes it still, and she will make it long after every machine in this story is a riddle in a museum. Breathe with the house now, in like a door opening to let the last one home, out like a chair pushed in against the table, in, out, slower. The rooms are dark and the rooms are full, and nothing more is asked of anyone until morning, the same as last night, the same as 100 years of nights, the same as all the quiet nights stretching out ahead, laid end to end like plates in a cupboard, waiting their turn. Everyone is in their chair. Everyone is home. The table holds. Good night.